Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie, and on this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to talk about one of those great British bands that had such an impact on me in my youth. I must have been 16 or 17 years old when I first heard the band I'm going to talk about now, and that band goes by the name of Ultravox. Now, I always like to start these episodes off and tell you how I got into the band. And that's basically because one of those late night pre-MTV video shows, they played a video by Ultravox called Passing Strangers. And I was hooked immediately. And then within a few weeks, I heard the song Vienna and the song Sleepwalk. And of course, by then, I already owned the album. And I've been a fan ever since. But that's not where their story starts. So we're going to go through the catalog here real fast. And I hope you enjoy this. I hope it inspires you to maybe check out Ultravox. But let's go back to 1977 and their debut album, Self-Titled. This is the lineup that featured John Fox on vocals, Billy Currie on keyboards, Chris Cross on bass, Warren Cann on drums, and Stevie Shears on guitar. This is very edgy, kind of punky, almost Bowie-inspired glam type thing. Very different from what they were to become, but this was the sound that introduced the world to Ultravox. Later that year came Ha Ha Ha. This was also released in 1977. More of that edgy guitar. Of course, Billy Currie was playing keyboards and other instruments in the band, but the keyboards really hadn't come out quite yet. Until, of course, their 1978 album called Systems of Romance. Now, this album here, it sort of took off from that edgy sound from earlier, but they were becoming more refined, more mature. The songs were a little moodier. The band was really coming into their own. Now, on this release, Stephen Shears had been replaced by Robin Simon on guitar. And this was, like I said, more mature, more moody, showed them going in, at that point, a more modern direction and embracing electronics a little more. And of course, Billy Currie was at the forefront of that. But then the lineup split. John Fox, Robin Simon left the band, keyboardist Billy Currie, bassist Chris Cross, and drummer Warren Cann. Now, before I continue with the rest of their career, just let me tell you that all three of these albums, plus a collection of rarities, is available in this box set called The Island Years. And that's readily available. But the next album was really the album that kicked in. They brought in Midge Ure as the guitarist vocalist. And Midge Ure, I'm going to admit right now, is my third favorite vocalist of all time, behind Elvis Presley and Tim Finn from Split Enz and Solo. But Midge Ure is my third favorite vocalist, and Vienna is one hell of an album. Midge Ure's guitar on this album is edgy like the first couple albums, but electronics really took over. This album has Sleepwalk, Passing Strangers, Vienna, so many great songs on this. Now, the U.S. version of the album was in a different order, but it had the same songs. And then this is the deluxe edition that has a bonus disc with bonus tracks and a fantastic album. This is really when they ushered in synth pop, new romantic. It's an incredible album, and if you have not heard it, you need to right now. The following year, they issued Ragin Eden, which was a departure. It was more electronic, and it was sounding more like their side project called Visage. I say the sound-wise was closer to Visage than it was to Vienna, but it was still a great collection of songs. Songs like The Voice, The Thin Wall. This was a much moodier album. It just showed them embracing electronics, the new romantic movement, all of that great stuff. Fantastic album. It didn't do as well as Vienna because I think it was so different, but I usually love when a band takes chances. So what do they do in 1982? They come out with an album called Quartet. They do have George Martin produce the album. This album is incredible. Here, of course, is the deluxe edition with loads of bonus tracks. Him is an absolute standout, but Wreath the Wild Wind, We Came to Dance, so many great songs. And it showed them really maturing as songwriters and players as well. Took 2 years before the album Lament came out, and I will tell you right now that this is really just a fantastic record. This album was as different from Quartet as Ragin Eden was to Vienna. This is an album that's looser, and it's maybe even more experimental, but still filled with great tracks. One of the biggest tracks that they ever released was Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, and that is available there, but it's also got White China and so many great songs in there. Of course, bonus disc, bonus tracks. After that album, they went off and they did other things separately, but they came together in 1986 for the album Ultravox. Now, this album here was a total departure. Drummer Warren Kahn was gone, and they brought in Mark Brzezinski from Big Country. Now, anybody knows they're completely different drummers. So this is more of a rock album. It's light on keyboards, heavier on guitar, some great tracks on there. They actually have a song that the Chieftains play on. Ultimately, it was kind of a letdown because you're so used to them taking these small steps. And this was just like one huge step in a completely different direction. But I think that if you're a Midge fan and an Ultravox fan, you'll see beyond that sort of stylistic difference, and you will embrace the songs because there are some great songs in there. This is the deluxe edition. Loads of bonus tracks. And of course, that spelled the end of Ultravox, which was really sad. But Midge continued, and he had a great solo career. And after a few years, Billy Currie reformed Ultravox, but he was the only original member. I know that there are naysayers out there going, forget that, that's not really Ultravox. Well, guess what? A lot of people said that when John Fox left and Midge came on. In 1993, Ultravox released the album called Revelation. Of course, Billy Currie was the only original member. New vocalist on the album was a gentleman by the name of Tony Finelli. I barely speak English, so I don't know how to pronounce names. And that was a pretty good album. I think it embraced AOR a little more commercial rock, but it was still very electronic, and it's still very much worth your while. It's not like this total departure from the Midge thing. It's much more in line with what Ultravox would have been doing if they hadn't done Ultravox and if they had been together. But even better, in 1994, out came an album called Ingenuity, which was Billy Currie's Ultravox with a new vocalist called Sam Blue. Now, his range is closer to Midge. He doesn't sound like Midge, but you can see how his vocals would have handled Midge songs live. And that, I think, is an even better album than Revelation. Lots of great songs on that album, and it's really worthwhile tracking that down. Now, I don't have each of those albums on CD individually, but I do happen to have a 2-CD set that combines them both. So there is Ultravox, both Revelation and Ingenuity. Then that version of Ultravox split up. The classic quartet, Midge, Chris Cross, Billy Currie, and Warren Kahn, did get back together in about 2008, and they toured and they did some live albums. Now, I usually never talk about live albums in these videos. I focus on the studio recordings, and I very rarely talk about best ofs. But I'm glad to say that Ultravox, when they returned, they did put out a new album that came out in 2012, and it is called Brilliant. Now, the album almost lives up to its name. It basically blends all the great stuff you loved about Vienna and Ragin Eden and Quartet and Lament, and it blends all that together. But I've only had 9 years to ingest this album, where I've had 30 or 40 years to ingest everything else. So lots of great songs. Midge is sounding great. The band is sounding great together. And I do highly recommend this, but the earlier albums have a few decade advantage on this. So I would say it's definitely a fine album. And this would have been the perfect follow-up to Lament. But that is actually it. A couple things I want to show you. Number one, now, I didn't mention anything about like the John Fox or Midge solo stuff because they sort of deserve a video on their own. And also, if you maybe don't want to quite jump into Ultravox quite yet, but you want to get a taste of them, there's so many compilations out there that feature solo Midge and Ultravox. This is one of them. This is one of the earliest ones. Now, what I didn't mention before is Midge had a hand in writing Do They Know It's Christmas for Band-Aid. He's one of the main people behind that, him and Bob Geldof. But he's also a big part of Visage. Now, this great compilation here has a lot of his side projects, not just solo on Ultravox, but it also has a single with Mick Karn and has a couple singles that were not on albums, and it's really a fascinating look. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you. Remember, I was talking about the Vienna album. That was the album that really introduced me and a lot of people to Ultravox and the great vocals of Midge. Well, there is a 40th anniversary version out there. I have the CD version. This is 5 CDs. It has the digitally remastered version of the album. It has a new Steven Wilson remix. It has bonus tracks. It has unreleased like cassette rehearsal recordings, and it has a DVD audio with like the 5.1 surround and stuff. But there's that right there. It's actually an incredible album. If you're going to start with Ultravox, you can start with Vienna and move your way forward or backward, whichever you prefer. But you know what? Just start with Ultravox. That's all I can say. Well, that's it for this episode. I really appreciate you allowing me to talk about Ultravox, who I love. Midjure, like I said, one of my favorite vocalists of all time. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.